but it's being kept secret. Isn't an autopsy a public document? Why is it being kept hidden from us, the
Mississippi law says an autopsy is a public record, unless a criminal investigation is ongoing. So when the state completes its examination of a deceased 19-year-old, and then locks that report away from the family and the public, the document itself becomes the first piece of evidence. Not the cause of death, the refusal to disclose it. The secret is the signal. Nobody asked, nobody answered.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the up!
Picture a dispatch recording, stored on a server in a government office. A file nobody listened to clearly until an audio engineer working alone at 5:45 in the morning downloaded it and isolated the left channel from the right. That recording contained a 911 call placed from a sinking boat off Horn Island, Mississippi. The caller reported a mechanical failure, but buried beneath the surface noise, underneath the panic about a broken bilge pump, something else was being said. Something that, if authentic, transforms a tragic accident into a criminal inquiry.
researching. It was early in the morning, like 5:45 a.m. several days ago, and I was researching the Nolan Wells case, and I saw the transcript as it was being played, and my husband was also up. He said, "What's wrong?" I'm like, if this is real, this changes everything. It changes everything. Because up until that point, it seemed as if Nolan's death could very well have been an accident.
When independent audio engineer Janetta Brantley first processed the file, she wasn't looking for a crime. She was reviewing publicly released audio from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Her reaction upon hearing the isolated voices was immediate. She stated the discovery was seismic, because up until that moment, the prevailing assumption was that Nolan Wells drowned by accident on July 4th. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
Those things, when I heard, "Damn it, Bart," that name stood out to me because I hadn't even heard that name before. As I was listening to certain things that stood out to me, I was in disbelief because, again, I'm just an audio engineer. I'm not an investigator, or detective, or anything like that. So when I heard a name that I wasn't familiar with, it stood out to me, and that alone made me want to hear what was immediately said after "Damn it, Bart." And so that's why in that process where "Damn it, Bart" came in loud and clear to me, I decided to go over to the next part to hear what the rest of that statement was, which is where you saw me actually create a loop over that part, split that part, and then add a gain, which the gain is boosting the volume overall. And that's pretty much what you saw me do in that actual video. And so to hear, "Damn it, Bart, Nolan's really dead now," that I couldn't believe.
The enhanced recording captured fragments that the original playback obscured. A name not previously associated with the case, spoken in frustration, and then a declaration. Direct words that, if genuine, don't describe a rescue, they describe a body. Brantley testified she was in disbelief. She hadn't expected to hear what she heard. She isolated the phrase, looped it, boosted the gain, and then confirmed the words were, "Nolan's really dead now."
This is from a completely independent source with no dog in the fight, no skin in the game. It's from Dispatch at Ceto. And if this is real, this blows the case wide up. Now, you saw Janetta Brantley. You've heard her. I have no reason to disbelieve anything she's saying.
Veteran trial lawyers reviewing the same audio noted something critical about its chain of custody. This recording didn't come from a police wiretap. It wasn't obtained through a warrant or extracted from a suspect's phone. It was the official dispatch recording released by a state agency. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources published it themselves. That makes it, in the words of one legal analyst, a completely independent source. No dog in the fight, no skin in the game.
Audio that Janetta Brantley enhanced innocently, I believe, had been already AI or doctored. Okay, let's follow that through to its logical conclusion. You just throw that out there like a stink bomb at the circle. You know what a circle meeting is, right? In the United Methodist Church, all the ladies have circle meetings. Okay. To suggest this was doctored before Janetta got it means it had to have been doctored or AI created by who? The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. No, don't just go, that doesn't work in court, Burkhartz.
Immediately, a secondary question emerged. If the audio was released by the state before Brantley ever touched it, was it already altered? To suggest manipulation means identifying who manipulated it. The only entity that possessed the original file before public release was the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, which leads to an uncomfortable fork in the road. Either the audio is authentic and the words on it are real, or a state agency tampered with evidence before handing it to the public.
Then you got into the medical examiner findings. Okay, what was your theory on that? Very quickly.
Very quickly. If he's dead on the boat, how did he die? It should be
While the audio dispute intensifies, the physical evidence presents its own contradictions. The state autopsy is complete but sealed. A second autopsy, commissioned by the family and performed by the former chief medical examiner for Washington, D.C., returned findings described as inconclusive. That word doesn't mean nothing happened. It means the body, by the time it reached the independent examiner, could no longer speak clearly.
They're going to try to rule in or rule out what they're seeing presenting on Nolan's remains when they finally did receive them at the state medical examiner's office and that examination began. And this is going to be critical and key, because the causal effects here are going to be critical. We go back to these changes that the second autopsy referred to on the back of the head. Now, the doctor was not able to, at that point in time, even though he did do a thorough, what's referred to as a layered dissection here, he could not establish the causal effects here because the injury or the insult that you see there, this presentation, is compromised by decomposition. So what did the state medical examiner see? My problem is here, Nancy, how was the body treated before or after the first autopsy and the body is transported up to DC? I have questions about this because they're talking about to the degree with which the body was decomposed. The doctor up in DC is seeing significant decomposition. We don't know what they saw in Mississippi, but I do know that you're only talking about and I'm ballparking here, please give me some grace, maybe 48 hours tops before the medical legal authorities have.
Forensic pathologists examining the known facts point to a specific problem. The independent doctor noted significant decomposition when the remains arrived in D.C., but the body was in state custody for no more than approximately 48 hours before the first autopsy began. A death investigator with over 10,000 scenes of experience asked the question the sealed report won't answer. How does a body degrade that rapidly in under 2 days under state control? The handling of the remains is now part of the investigation.
Look how tightly everyone is packed in. There were hundreds of people out on Horn Island on July the 4th. What, nobody saw what happened to Nolan Wells? They all just left with him standing there stranded, waving his arms like Gilligan?
Then there's the location. Horn Island on July 4th. Video footage obtained from that day shows the shoreline packed. Hundreds of people in close proximity. And yet, according to the official narrative, a young man was left stranded on the island. No one saw what happened to Nolan Wells. Not one witness among hundreds reported a man waving his arms calling for help as a boat departed without him. The crowd density and the silence don't match.
Yeah, well, that's what the family is saying. They don't believe he died by accident. That's the point. That's the reason why Nolan Wells' mom is saying, I don't believe this. I don't believe he died by accident before we had the audio. The audio simply confirms that there are additional questions that needs to be asked. It wasn't just one thing they said in the audio. They said Nolan repeatedly in the audio. They said check his chest in the audio. They said, is he dead in the audio? And also notice this, Nancy. Did you notice that the operator also said, is anybody breathing? Who says that? What operator says who all is breathing on the boat? So is this all the audio, Nancy? Is there more audio? That's my question.
The audio, however, fills in what the crowd didn't see. The enhanced recording contains multiple fragments, repeated use of the victim's name, a question about checking his chest, a question about whether anyone is breathing. The dispatch operator herself, in a deviation from standard emergency protocol, asked who on the boat was still breathing. That is not a mechanical failure call. That is a death call disguised as a distress signal.
He's already dead. Is he dead? Yeah. Nolan, OMG, wake up. And as Janetta stated, then she hears a completely different name, Bart. Now, we also hear, and I'm very curious, the phrase, no. Teslin Figaro, was that a nickname of Nolan Wells?
I cannot confirm if that's a nickname of his or not. But what I do know is we heard Nolan. What I do know is we heard check his chest. What I do know is that we said, is he dead? What we do know is we heard screams. There's folks out there suggesting that perhaps they were talking to a seagull or perhaps talking to some random bird that was flying around that's called No. There were folks out there that suggesting, well, maybe they were talking about the boat. Come on, we got to knock this off, Nancy. We heard what we heard. And so we were to put this before a jury.
Also, we hear, damn it, Bart, No-No's really dead. Damn it, Bart, No-No's really dead.
The words captured in the recording escalate further. One voice says, "We think you killed him." Another says, "He's already dead." There are screams. And then the name Bart emerges, a name previously unmentioned. The phrase, "Damn it, Bart, Nolan's really dead now," repeats. The victim's nickname was reportedly No. The recording captures that name too. The transcript doesn't describe an accident. It describes aftermath.
Before we even had the tapes, her theory is, I told my son, I've raised my son just like I've raised my 19-year-old the same way, Nancy, like I'm sure you raise your children. Come back with the people you went with. Her theory has always been that he is a fantastic swimmer, that he is an athlete. Her theory has always been that he did not drown. Her theory has always been that there's something wrong with this picture. Her theory has always been that the fact that, he left his phone and left his keys. Her theory has also always been that he did not just go off with some random stranger and say, guys, don't worry about it, just leave.
The victim's mother had a theory long before this audio surfaced. She maintained Nolan was a strong swimmer, an athlete. He didn't drown. He left his phone and keys behind. He didn't wander off voluntarily. The audio, according to the family's advocates, didn't create a new theory. It confirmed what a mother already knew. The secret autopsy may answer what she's been saying all along. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Being held for the grand jury to look into that. And the fact, as you brought up, Nancy, earlier, that part of his throat was missing. Will that be key? There's so many questions around this, but right, it's a public record, but we're not hearing about it. I guess they're waiting for the grand jury to show them that first.
The autopsy report sits with the prosecutor's office, held for a grand jury. Under Mississippi law, the district attorney can instruct the medical examiner to withhold the findings if the case is under active investigation. A completed report with toxicology and tissue studies exists. The public simply isn't allowed to read it. The coroner, an elected official, serves as the gatekeeper. The gate is currently locked.
Investigation. They're going to go to grand jury with this. I can tell you that. I'll bet you dollars to donuts if that's the case. We see it with, we saw it with Idaho 4, right? We didn't have it there. We don't have it with Charlie Kirk. That's an ongoing event. This is being investigated. And, the point of contact here is an interesting situation here because you have the state medical examiner, but you also have a county coroner. The state medical examiner provides a service to the county coroner. The coroner is an elected official. He does not do these autopsies. And so the coroner is going to be the gatekeeper relative to any kind of document. But with that said, under state statute, the DA, the prosecutor, they can say, look, you're going to hold off on releasing this report. So it's being held at this point in time. Now, the reports that we're hearing are saying that it is complete. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have a complete autopsy report, that means they've got tox. They've probably got histology, which is going to be the tissue studies, and they actually have the anatomical autopsy report that has been completed. That's what I think it was ABC that was reporting that. I can't validate that, but that's what is being leaked out at this point.
A forensic death investigator confirmed that a complete autopsy means toxicology panels are finished. The anatomical report is written. The histology, the microscopic tissue examination, is done. And yet, The contents remain sealed while a grand jury convenes behind closed doors. No public testimony, no released exhibits. The secrecy surrounding the medical evidence now mirrors the secrecy on the boat the night Nolan Wells died.
Yeah, and keep in mind the second physician that did the autopsy, who, by the way, is highly respected, the former chief medical examiner for D.C., that was retained by the family. He didn't see any evidence of fractures. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a concussive event. I'm talking about being hit in the head, and you can have stuff that's contained within the cranial vault that might not be presenting. But again, back to what I said earlier, I find it very interesting that this doctor is commenting on the state of the decomposition when he sees the body, and that's problematic. It's very problematic when you're trying to make an assessment. You're already absent the organs of the neck. You're absent intact lungs, and because the specter of drowning is on the table as well. So if you want to make a thorough scientific assessment, he's kind of handcuffed, isn't he, at this point? And again, going back to this idea, how long did it take?
The independent autopsy revealed no skull fractures, but that doesn't rule out a concussive event. Internal cranial trauma can occur without fracturing bone. The examiner also noted the absence of neck organs and intact lungs, standard removals during a first autopsy. But the decomposition level he observed was inconsistent with the timeline. The body traveled from Mississippi to D.C. under unknown conditions. The question now is not just how Nolan died. It's how his remains were treated before the second examination.
Have the friends taken polygraphs?
Well, from my understanding, all but I believe one took a polygraph, and from what was told to me, that they all passed. And all of the ones that took a polygraph took one without a lawyer. And they cooperated with law enforcement. So from my understanding, everybody took a polygraph test. Why do you say that's from what you
understand? Did they tell you they took a poly and passed?
Yes, ma'am. They told me that they did it. I wasn't there. So that's what I'm saying from my understanding. They told me that all the boys except one, which is Warren, I believe, took a polygraph test. All of them did not have lawyers and did it and cooperated with police. Warren also cooperated with police. I just believe he didn't take a lie detector test, but Warren is the young man that I interviewed. So according to what they told me, they all took a lie detector test and passed. And it's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's not a traditional lie detector test, but it's the same theology of trying to get to if a person is lying. I don't know the name of it. It's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's a different methodology. I don't believe it was a polygraph test. I believe they took other stressors in order to analyze if the people were telling the truth or not.
Did they take a polygraph would be no. He's charming.
Multiple young men on the boat that night reportedly submitted to lie detector tests. Initial claims suggested they passed standard polygraph examinations. But under scrutiny, the details collapsed. A former FBI polygraph examiner confirmed the tests were not traditional polygraphs. They appear to have been voice stress analyzers, a technology with significantly weaker scientific validation. One of the individuals declined testing entirely. The claim of universal cooperation is demonstrably false.
So, telling me these boys, as they call them, they're young men, took, first it was a poly, then I find out it's a voice stress test, took a test, and they passed, except one of them didn't take it, that means nothing. Put them on a poly with questions approved by the state, then I'll pay attention. Right now, it's really not worth the salt that goes in my bread. You know what? If I wanted someone to pass one of these lie detector tests,
Voice stress analysis measures micro, tremors in vocal patterns. Polygraphy measures respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, and electrodermal activity. The difference is not procedural, it is forensic. No court in the United States admits a voice stress test as evidence. The statement that all witnesses passed amounts to a claim that cannot be verified by any admissible standard. The investigation's foundation rests on instruments that wouldn't survive a Daubert hearing.
Death threats, including one that says, blood will be everywhere. What was that?
That was from a man out of Sacramento, now arrested and threatening the judge, who is the stepmother of Warren. And talk about frightening, saying a lot of blood. There'll be a lot of blood like there was on the boat, but yours will be much faster.
The perp is Joseph Alfredo Vasquez Dumars, arrested Thursday on charges of interstate transmission of threatening communication. Now, these are federal documents. What did he threaten one of the young men's mom with, Susan?
The threats were against Warren, one of the boys on the boat, his stepmother, who is a judge. And it was graphic, it was brutal, saying there will be blood everywhere, threatening her life, talking about on the boat, saying
it really does. It says that he is sending a bomb to her office that will, quote, blow you away when you see it. Once that package is open, the timer will start. Then you have 10 seconds or less to ask God for forgiveness. So much blood everywhere, hard to clean, especially from a boat.
While the forensic disputes continue, the case has attracted external threats that further obscure the facts. A California man was federally indicted for transmitting threats against the stepmother of one of the boat's occupants, a sitting judge. His message explicitly referenced blood on the boat and promised more. A second defendant, an Ohio woman, faces charges for bomb threats of Mississippi government offices connected to the investigation. The noise around the case grows louder while the core evidence remains silent.
Absolutely. And, I don't condone violence on anybody, but I do want to put some context behind this, Nancy, as well. I was a police officer in the Air Force. You're talking about government officials, meaning I'm sure the judge has received threats. I'm sure the police officer has received threats, although they should not happen. But these are individuals that have taken, just like you and I, have taken on, positions that it comes with the territory. You have received death threats. I have received death threats. So the people that's not being talked about that's receiving the death threats is Nolan Wells' mother and father. Why is nobody talking about the death threats with them? They've reported it. Why isn't anybody arresting the people who are actually harassing the victims? It's online. It's available for people to see. So I just find it very interesting that there's so much sympathy for a police officer who not only do they receive death threats, they put their life on the line. They signed up and raised their hand to say, hey, pick me for the death threats and pick me to give my very life, as I did in the Air Force. So it is not right what is happening, but we also have to shine a light on the actual victims, the actual people who are grieving the loss of their son, and nobody gives a damn about the death threats that they're receiving.
I want to be...
The victim's family also reports receiving threats. Online harassment directed at grieving parents. While law enforcement agencies receive federal protection and media sympathy when threatened, the family of the deceased has asked publicly why no arrests have been made for the threats targeting them. The disparity in response is itself a form of evidence. It reveals whose safety the system prioritizes and whose it treats as secondary.
We don't want secret medical examiner reports. We want all threats investigated. We want the truth behind that audio. I want to know. And I want everybody on that boat polygraphed. We want answers. If you know, or you think you know anything about this case, dial 228-769-3063. Tonight, we honor Canine Echo, protected while serving the Sartell PD, Minnesota, because a group called Vested Interest in Canines created a bullet and stab-proof protected vest and protected Echo. These things aren't standard. They're over $1,000 each. And I've seen many canines die on crime scenes. Protect those canines who protect us. We remember an American hero, Officer Brian Huff, Detroit PD, shot in the line of duty after 12 years, leaving behind his wife, Melissa, and their son, Blair. American hero, Officer Brian Huff. Thank you to our guests for being with us tonight, but especially to you for joining us in our search for the truth. However it may pan out, if it brings down the courthouse walls, so be it.
We want the truth about Nolan Wells. That means the autopsy report currently sealed in Mississippi must be released. It means every individual on that boat must submit to a properly administered polygraph examination with questions reviewed by prosecutors, not defense counsel. It means the chain of custody for the body between the first and second autopsy must be documented and disclosed. Secrecy protects nobody except those with something to hide. The publicly available court filing you need to read is the federal criminal complaint against Joseph Alfredo Vasquez, filed in the Southern District of Mississippi. That document contains explicit references to the boat and the blood that the defendant himself connected to this case. Read it. Then tell us in the comments if the death was an accident. Why is a federal defendant writing about blood on that boat? The paperwork already knows. The question is whether the grand jury will be allowed to see it.